The newest basher from Team Associated is here, and it's 8 scale, 6S compatible, and all-wheel drive. Today we're talking about speedrunning and bashing the all-new rival MT8 monster truck. As many of you know, the MT8 is a 6S brushless powered basher that's 8 scale in size, fully ready to run out of the box, and features one of the lowest price tags in the category, costing just over $500 at the time we filmed this. Now this version includes no batteries, but the MT8 combo does, including a 4S LiPo battery and a LiPo balanced charger. The MT8 is actually compatible with the 3S, 4S, and 6S LiPo battery, with 6S producing the most power and speed, of course, but we'll get to that in a minute. Rule number 1 of RCing, don't hit yourself, because this is a 10.5 pound RC truck that's almost 23 inches long. For a size comparison, the 1/8 scaled Outcast 6S BLX would be the closest in stance, with the MT8 being just slightly longer and a little more narrow. Now here's the MT10, which is like the little brother to the MT8, and we get a good look at the extra size offered by an 8 scale MT8 versus the 10 scale MT10. For styling, the MT8 continues with the pickup truck looks, although it's been updated over the MT10 and it looks pretty dang good. It features a pre-painted and pre-decaled Lexan body with a hard plastic nose piece, hard plastic roof skids, and attached hard plastic roll bars. The rear spoiler is also made from hard plastic with all plastic pieces secured from the inside of the body with screws. 4 body clips hold on the Lexan shell, which is pretty standard, but when removed, the full chassis layout opens up to us. Now this is an interesting platform that starts with a 4mm thick aluminum chassis plate with plastic skid plates and plastic side guards for that tub chassis look. The drivetrain is all metal with metal CVDs used in the front and the rear, metal center dog bones, and all metal outdrives. 2 chassis braces connect to the center point, assembled by using that aluminum rod with threaded rods at the end and then a plastic end attached to those threaded rods. The MT8 also uses 3 gear differentials, and from the factory, the front diff comes installed with 60,000 weight fluid, the center has 100,000 weight, and the rear has 30,000. For the 16mm aluminum big bore shocks, they come equipped with 50 weight fluid front and rear, and they're pretty smooth and primed for jumping. The MT8 also uses an independent suspension all around with aluminum suspension hangers front and rear. There's also steel turnbuckles used that are adjustable with a 5mm turnbuckle wrench like this ProTech one, and we actually had to adjust these turnbuckles when we unboxed the truck because the rear tires had a little bit of positive camber where they lean out at the top, and we want them leaning in a degree or two. And thankfully, adjusting them is really easy and quick. The MT8 also features an adjustable servo saver in the steering assembly connected to the Reedy 2513 MG servo via a metal servo horn. That 2513 MG servo outputs around 300 ounce-inches of torque. It has metal gears and it's water resistant. Now behind the servo is the radio box, closed with 1 clip or hinges up when open. There's no O-ring used here, so it's probably not watertight, and I'd avoid getting this area wet. For power, the MT8 uses the Reedy 2100 kV brushless motor with an 11-tooth 32-pitch pinion gear, and that's secured to a sliding aluminum motor mount. For the electronic speed controller, it's the SC1500BL. It's brushless, compatible from 3S to 6S LiPo, uses 12 AUG wire, and has 1 T-style battery connector attached. That T-style battery connector is probably the most common and most popular connector used in RC, but it's not really recommended for 6S use. The biggest battery you'd want to use with a T-style is a 4-cell LiPo. For 6S use, and those bigger power demands, you're going to want to use a bigger, more robust connector on the MT8, something like this IC5 that we soldered on. Now during use, that battery box works really well. It's got Velcro straps, it's easy to get batteries in and out. Batteries never fell out during use or in crashing. It was all right. The thing is though, initially finding batteries to fit inside that battery box was a little tricky. Recently, we've been using these Basher Pro packs, and they have a 157mm length, which is about a half a centimeter too long to fit into that battery box. So what we did instead is that we found this ProTech 6S pack that's kind of a generic pack and it comes without a connector on it. So we put an EC5 on there and this fits in there really well. We even wrapped some foam around it. And this has 140 millimeter length. So that's our 6S pack. For a 3S, this is our Gens Ace. It's an older Gens Ace 3-cell. It's a shorter length and it fits really good inside that battery box. For a 4-cell, we're going to be using this ProTech race grade battery. It's a high-end battery. We were gonna try to get the 4-cell that comes with the MT8 combo, but it's out of stock right now. So we're gonna do speed runs on a 3-cell, a 4-cell, and a 6-cell. We tested 6S power first, and oh boy, is the throttle on the MT8 a handful to tame. And it does take a little warming up to, as does the tire ballooning.
All right, I'm bringing it back. That's all I got.
In the end, after several passes, the best we could achieve from the MT8 on 6S was a top speed of 49 miles an hour. Under the right conditions, I'm sure it could go faster if you can keep the front end down. Next, we test the 4S LiPo battery, and the truck is way more manageable and surprisingly still plenty fast. After a few passes, on that 4S battery, the MT8 achieved 48 miles an hour. Last but not least, we test the 3S LiPo battery, and again, after a few passes, the MT8 hit a top speed of 34 miles per hour. So between the 6S and the 4S batteries, there's little difference in speed, and it's mainly because on 6S, it's really hard to lay down power without the truck flipping back on you. The truck features an adjustable wheelie bar, and when you want to wheelie, no problem. But when a heavy amount of 6S power is applied, the wheelie bar just can't stop that momentum, and the truck will flip back on its lid, and it happened to us countless times. Bashing on 6S has equal results, where you just need to be real gingerly on that trigger finger before the truck flips back on you. It was also noticed that the first half of the trigger pull feels a little soft, whereas the second half really hits the power. It may be from a soft cog out of the motor, maybe the motor could benefit from a smaller pinion gear, or maybe it's just the way the ESC is programmed. But after those 6S speed runs, we bashed in the street a little bit, and then the truck thermaled on us and shut down. And I put my finger in there to see how hot the motor can was, and man, it immediately singed my skin. The motor was way too hot. And this was during a day where it was 85 degrees Fahrenheit outside. Now, one thing that's interesting is the truck is equipped with an 11-tooth pinion gear, and the only other smaller 32-pitch pinion gears are going to be a 9 and a 10-tooth, which isn't a whole lot of wiggle room for adjustments. Optional spur gears that are offered down the road would really help remedy the gearing options, but it's something to be mindful of for anyone who's thinking about changing that pinion gear. Now, instead of gearing down, we just found success by installing this Exotech 1/8 scale sized fan mount, and it clamps onto the motor can, and then we installed this 30mm ProTech aluminum fan to it, which plugs right into the last port on the receiver, the aux. So, what's it like bashing the MT8? Well, first of all, it is a wheelie factory, and it can produce wheelies at almost any speed, especially on 6S. The suspension on the MT8 feels great thanks to those 16mm big bore shocks, and they're set up on the heavier side to avoid bottoming out when jumping. Now, we never did any big jumps with the truck or busted out the ramp at all, but the MT8 has so much power, if you did, the tires balloon up so big that when you get airborne, it would backflip super easily without any effort. You could say the MT8 was kind of like a stunt truck with all those effortless wheelies and easy backflips. It reminds me a little bit of an Arrma Outcast, while still being a little bit more of a monster truck. With the power and speed, technically the MT8 is 6S ready. But when you're driving this truck, harnessing and controlling that power is pretty much impossible. On 6S, the MT8 drives you, not the other way around. In the history of this YouTube channel and the hundreds of videos we've made and all the cars we've tested, this is only the second vehicle that we couldn't confidently control on 6S, with the first being a 6S converted Traxxas Max. Now for us, we found the best balance of control and power with the MT8 when we used a 4-cell battery. The truck is still plenty fast, plenty powerful, and still pops plenty of wheelies. Plus, the 4S battery also helped out keeping our motor temperatures down, which is always a plus. Now there were a few issues that we encountered that you want to keep in mind if you're considering buying this truck. The first thing is that battery connector, like we already mentioned earlier. It really needs to be upgraded to something more robust if you want to use 6S LiPos in the MT8. Second issue we had is that our truck has half of the turnbuckles installed backwards, like they were installed to look symmetrical. These turnbuckles are notched to indicate their thread direction, and that notch needs to be facing in the same direction, so the adjustment direction is consistent between all turnbuckles. But it's a really easy fix. You just unthread it out of the plastic end and then flip the turnbuckle around and reinstall it. The last issue to report is the only part we broke on the truck, and it didn't even fully break, but it's the plastic rod end bending at the front point of the center rear brace. Now we don't know exactly when this happened, but we're pretty sure it happened during the rock garden passings, which is really abusive on the truck. Nevertheless, keeping a bag of those spares of that plastic end is gonna be a really good idea until a solid brace is created in the aftermarket world. Guys, go check out the rival MT8 with our links down below, and if you want more RC, check out these videos.